I have written here, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, but the gender quota here is a little bit misrepresented, I have to say. But it was like that in the past, but in the other direction. So it's really good to see you all, and good evening, everyone. Welcome to the special side event hosted by Women on Boards Adria and Sustainary Partners, right here in the Blue Room at ESG Adria Summit 2025. And as we were doing rehearsals all day about the applause, let me just listen to that applause a little bit. Such an amazing audience. This is an invite-only space, a room for leaders, not just by title, but by action, by intent, and especially by impact. Tonight's conversation is titled Leading with Courage, Wisdom, and Impact. And that's exactly what the two women we are about to hear from have done in boardrooms, in global forums, and even in national governments. Before we move into the fireside chat, let us open with brief reflections from two women who have been instrumental in creating this platform and moving the needle forward across our region. Please welcome Biljana Braithwaite, founding partner and CEO of Sustainary Partners, and Maja Turkovic, executive vice president at CWP Europe. Okay, Maja will be at the... Maja will be closing. Oh, she will be closing?
Yes.
Amazing. Thank you, Biljana. Well, the floor is yours. I will be sitting here only for the quota.
My plan was to say a few words. I didn't have to sit. I mean, I am of the age where I sit down as soon as it's 5 seconds. But no, to greet you all on behalf of WOBA. WOBA was born at this summit 2 years ago, and some of you, I'm looking at Brankitsa, were with us on that summit when we, I mean, there is a beauty to saying something at a stage in front of a few hundred people. It's quite difficult not to get it done then afterwards and turn up in a year's time and explain why not. So I've now made the habit that I make these commitments at a summit and deliver them at the next. But WOBA wouldn't be what it is without support of so many of you. We've set up institutional partnerships, we've set up corporate partnerships. Many of our ambassadors are here in the room, and I hope that many of you who haven't engaged with us previously will take this opportunity to speak to Nevena and me. Nevena is our program lead. Find out more and join us in one capacity or the other. This is a joint event, and it's a joint event organized by Women on Boards Adria and 100 Women Wines. I also happen to be one of the 100 Women Wines. I think it's a wonderful initiative that I've joined relatively recently. Shows how good women are when they cooperate, but I will leave it to Maja to tell you more about the initiative. I'm looking at my daughter over there, who will eventually inherit this tiny bit of vineyard, because all of us have to make a commitment that it will be passed on to women only, to keep it as a female cooperative. So enjoy the wines. They're absolutely excellent. And thanks again to the team of 100 Women Wines for being here with us. I will now step away because we have incredible speakers, and I suggest you
But please stay with me until I announce.
Okay.
Not to be alone, since I will be enjoying the wine afterwards. Finally. And thank you very much for your commitment and vision, and for helping make space for new leadership to rise across the Adria region, as you already mentioned, here, especially in the audience. We now move into our fireside chat, which will be moderated by Nevena Dičić-Kostić, Head of Programs at Women on Boards Adria, and Policy and Research Lead at Sustainary Partners. And I will leave the rest to Nevena. Come on, Nevena, we are going now.
It's such a pleasure to be here tonight, and not to take any time on my own here. I would really like to invite Katrín to join me here on the stage for this amazing opportunity. To have an open conversation with you, and I personally think it's a kind of a gift to all of us of your time, and thank you so much for that. And I'll try to kind of open the floor and inspire all of you to ask questions, and I hope this will be a kind of two-way conversation. But first, let me just say a few words as I kind of have this opportunity to introduce you. And I'm hoping that tonight we will explore what we actually heard about you, from you today, and that is what it means to lead with courage and wisdom, two qualities that today feel as essential as possible, and I think in this room we have a lot of courage and wisdom. And usually we hear a lot of how women lean on vision, vulnerability, resilience as their qualities, aside from what we share with everyone else, like sense for strategy, ambition, and other. So for me today, I hope that we will kind of try to enlighten and put a light on what is not only to lead with your head, with kind of your rationale, but also kind of lead with your heart and what you feel about yourself and the community that you are working for, and all these women are also working for. You were introduced today many times, but let me at least say quickly how happy we are to have you here. During your time as a Prime Minister, but also throughout your career, you showed immense leadership skills in quite a new way that resonated globally and showed us that it is possible to lead in a different way. And it is possible to kind of tailor your leadership style to what you really are and what any of us really is. And so that there is not only one model that we all have to fit in, and that being authentic is actually very important. And so just to kind of open this conversation, and please, you can just, when you have a question and when you're inspired to kind of intervene, please just raise your hands. We'll see you and you can join us in this conversation. But for me, when I was thinking about your career, there was something that it's talked a lot about how you actually had a very important role as a Prime Minister to the time of immense crisis through COVID. And leading through COVID was very much different in your country than in many other countries in the world. And maybe you will tell me if I'm right or wrong, but for me, looking from the outside, it was a lot based on trust that your community kind of gave you and felt you, and kind of gave you the agency to lead them and trusted you. So can you tell me how important is trust, gaining the trust for leader, and what is your experience regarding that?
Well, thank you, and very happy to be with you here. And as Nevena said, please feel free to ask questions and intervene, use the opportunity. This is my first time in Montenegro, and I'm not often here. Well, and I'm very happy to be here actually, because this summit is somewhat unusual. It's very informal, it's very free-flowing, it's very democratic, and that's what I like about it, because we have very different kinds of people attending, and I think that's really key to interesting discussions and to learn something, and I think I've actually learned something already today by listening, so that I just wanted to say that. But trust, yes, trust in the times of a pandemic where you really don't know anything where you're heading. I sometimes joke about that during the pandemic, I think at least 3 times I declared that the pandemic was over, and then it was not over. So I think it's really something to manage to get through that and navigate through that pandemic, but that was also because I said in the beginning, we really don't know what kind of phase we're entering right now. We will do everything possible, everything in our human, that we in our human means can do to protect lives and to protect health. We will listen to the scientists and we will make our decisions based on the best data we've got. But taking that into consideration that we did not know anything about the virus in these first days, we often had to change tactics. And we had to say so openly. Now we're doing this differently because we have this and that data. Also, it was quite a temptation for politicians at that time to be central figures. And I was actually criticized for being not in the center during that time. You know, those usually male, those who go to the talk shows and talk about politicians said, well, she should be more in the center. Why is he letting the doctor speak, or the chief medical, or the chief, the director of health, or the chief epidemiologist? Why is he letting them speak? But think about it, if I would have been the center of attention for 2 years, I would definitely have to quit, after a few months. So it was actually a very sound decision, and I said, I don't want, this shouldn't become politicized. This is just a kind of a common challenge. I'm a politician, but we need all to work on this together. And I think that actually created a lot of trust, a lot of confidence. We had very high vaccination rates, extremely high, around 95%. So that's huge, because people knew about how the vaccinations worked, what we were doing. Actually, I was telling somebody about it earlier today because I was asked, there was kind of a system so that people came to vaccinations, everybody who were born in 1955, they could attend these days. And one very important part of the plan was that us, the politicians, we didn't get any priorities. I just came there on the day when the 1976 was there. It was remarkable, with 1.5 meters between, and everybody saying, hi, I haven't seen you for 10 years. So it was really, we tried to do this in an equitable and fair way. Yeah. And I think I'm very proud of it, even though it's a terrible subject and everybody hates talking about the pandemic. But Iceland actually was on top 3 when it came, among OECD countries, when it came to protecting life and health. We also implemented strong economic and social measures. So I think actually it was a difficult time, but it was a success story.
Yeah, I mean, what you're telling us about leading in COVID is actually it can be transferred to leading in any crisis. And just to reflect what you were saying, it takes a lot of confidence and kind of knowing yourself to step back actually and let others speak as well. And I see that a lot with women. Either they're leading in business or in politics or any other situation. It seems that they are capable of kind of giving the space to others without fear that their job or their role will be shaken. So
I think it's a strength. Yes, I think it's a strength to be able to put others in the spotlight. I led a government of 3 parties, a coalition government of very different parties. And the first thing I thought about when entering that period that lasted 6.5 years was, okay, and actually it was the first 3-party government to survive a whole term in Iceland, because usually there have been 2 parties, at most. Yeah. And I thought this will never work if you know, the ministers from different parties don't get kind of their moments in the spotlights. It's not good that the Prime Minister should always be there. They need to have their moments, their ownership. And somehow we worked that quite well out. So actually, even though we still disagree on many issues, we managed to stay focused on the most important ones.
When I said that you weren't shook, like not shaken, I remember actually one of the moments, and if I can go back to that is amazing moment when I saw for the first time your interview that went viral, when you actually had an interview during the earthquake. Do you remember that?
Yes, I remember that.
Yes.
There were severe earthquakes.
I know it happens. It wasn't the first one for you, but just I think it resonated so well with everyone because you saw your kind of speed in assessing situation, responding to situation, and continuing what you were on the path to do. So that was a really amazing moment.
I think we have, yes,
Of course.
I think we have, yes, thank you so much. This is a grand entrance. Very good.
Welcome, Anino.
Thank you.
Let me just say just a few words about you for those who were not with us this morning. And Anino is the founder of 100 Women at Davos. And just to make this shorter and close to our hearts, Anino is one of the greatest and strongest supporters of Women on Board Adria since our beginning, and is very generously sharing her knowledge, expertise, and advice.
Third guest in the panel, okay.
Now I'm curious who else would show up.
It's like the theater.
So yes. So thank you. Oh, this is actually very kind and nice cat, so we'll just...
It can stay.
It can stay there. It can be our mascot.
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
I mean, she will come again, I'm sure.
Gorgeous.
And let's assume it's a she. Let's assume
It's a female cat, yes.
Yeah, of course.
Strong women.
So, Anino, we agreed to just kind of start this conversation and then open the floor to everyone who is here and have opportunity to ask you questions. But maybe just for the start, you can reflect on what do you think are the main kind of leadership skills and styles, and maybe give us some hints of how to improve our leadership but also being true to ourselves, because when we try to adjust to standards that do not fit us, success won't come, and inner peace won't come, and we'll just live with a lot of stress. So maybe you can reflect on that.
Well, first of all, I hope you can hear me.
Yes.
Sincere apologies, Madam Prime Minister.
That's perfect. I'm so happy you're here.
Thank you. The background is, in today's world, there's some a lot of feeling of maybe anxiety with what's happening in the world, and a feeling and a reality of the rollback of women's rights and all the efforts we're making into women's leadership. But so much has happened, so much progress has been made. So just to assure everybody that that isn't what we should be worrying about. We should be worrying about, or what we should be concentrating on, is actually pushing forward. All these gains that we've had, even if sometimes there's a little bit of dip, once you're trying to to move forward, sometimes it happens. So let's not worry too much about that. Gone are the days where, for us as female leaders, we had to actually copy, in a sense, what our male peers were doing. And I know that, Katrín, I know that you know that very well. I have an example of a female leader who is in a male-dominated environment, just, I wouldn't say industry, just, and she, in all ways, in her stance, in her dress, and she was actually emulating her male colleagues without realizing it. Then she met the community, and she realized she could be herself. and even more of a leader. So simply put, is step into yourself. I won't give the rules or any rules of leadership now because we know them. If you're at this level, you know what it is to be a leader, right? So we know all of that. Step into yourself as a leader and realize that you are not just enough, you are actually more than enough. That's the first thing. The second thing is be intentional. And by that, what I mean is be conscious of what it is you're doing in terms of if it's your career you're building, be conscious of it. Very often with other things we're doing, we tend to just stay in the job, in the role. But think of it more holistically, what you want to do and what you want to achieve. If we talk about things like, resilience, empathy, being strategic, I think we know all of those right now. It's more about being certain that we have all that we need, but we just need to be strategic in the sense of actually stepping into ourselves and stepping into our leadership. Opportunities actually still abound, but you'll be surprised how oftentimes we actually turn it down. I'll just give a little example. I was at a conference, and these were global leaders talking, and a senior leader, an executive from a tech company. And she said, what happens very often with women leaders is that when they're given a position, right, or opportunity, sometimes it's like, oh, can I do this? What do I have to give up, etc., etc. And she says, we just have to go for it and figure it out once you get there. Now, the reason why I'm saying that, because the very next panel, true story, and it's all recorded, is a conference, no connection whatsoever, but there was this lady who was being celebrated for the role she had, a global role. She was #1 in Forbes. And she was asked, how did she get there? And she said, you know what? When I was given a role, a position, the first thing I said was, oh no, can I do that? How can I do that? Exactly what this lady had said, she had done, and she is #1 in her field, top global leader in that role. That, I think, is where we need to be strategic. There's nothing like being ready. It's when the opportunity is there. Absolutely take it and figure it out. A great network like this, and like others, critically important, your support and all of that. But it's never when you're ready, you are ready. Just literally step into it, look for it, and just absolutely go for it with the support of like-minded women around you.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much. So let's start with your questions. Yes, of course, Amina. Yes.
First of all,
Amina, can you wait for the microphone?
Yes.
Yes.
You keep ready.
okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Can you hear me now? Okay, perfect. What you just said about women taking up space, so powerful. And I just wanted to note that we are joined on the stage by Kitty, and she's taking up space and showing exactly what it is. But all jokes aside, one big question for me. So I'm not in a senior position. I'm just on the start of my career. And one of the big questions I have is the power of saying no and being comfortable with saying no. That is where I struggle at. Now, from your perspectives, none of you would be here without being comfortable with the no. I would just love to, perhaps, I believe we all can benefit from gaining insight into what does the no mean to you and actually being comfortable with it. Thank you.
Do you want to start?
You want me to start?
Yes,
Okay.
I can start too, please.
For me, saying no is this. It's part of the being intentional and being strategic. Very often, we don't realize it. We're actually saying yes in order to satisfy or please somebody else. And that goes, that's historical role, right? That contribution to something else. That's very often where the yes comes from. Because somebody has a need, they have a want. Now, if you're strategic, how is that saying yes taking you to where you're going to without being transactional? Because if it's taking you away to where you're going from, then you should say no. Because you do have a limit to time, hours, to everything, and especially very often for women. So it is, look at it as part of what it is you want to do and what is strategic for your role or your job, and evaluate it. Sometimes you have to say yes. If you want to move into a bigger job or role, for example, and you're being asked maybe to move sideways or whatever it is, that's, you know. But we're talking more about, I believe, tasks and things. Being strategic is critically important. And also, one of the secrets you all know is sometimes we do that housekeeping within organizations, right? All those roles that are very good and help the organization, but no one ever puts it into your appraisal. It doesn't get you anywhere, right? We like to be helpful, but we can't put ourselves at risk. It doesn't help anybody. So that's it. We have a limit to our resources. So be strategic and, you know, evaluate it. And how does that, you know, assist and help you without being transactional, but just being strategic?
I think it's a very good question, you know, about the no, because my disposition is to say yes. So I tend to say yes to practically everything. And that is why I'm here. Exactly, Liliana. You can't say no to Liliana. That's one thing. And, you know, I tend to say yes. I remember once, many years ago, I was very young and I was asked to do an interview on national television in Swedish. I did not speak Swedish, but I said yes, of course I will do that. Then I took a crash course in Swedish and I made that interview and it was quite good, yes.
Wow.
But when I turned 40, I learned to say no. And to learn to say no is the most important most important lesson that I have learned in my life. Because sometimes you just say yes to please others and not because you really want to do it. It's very true what you say about strategic thinking. I'm a very simple person, so I just say, if your gut say no, say no. If your gut say, okay, it might be interesting to go to Montenegro, you know, it's a cool lady, Biljana. But then you say yes. But if your gut say, oh no, this is not going to be interesting, say no, and nothing will happen, and never explain. That's one thing I learned too, because women tend to say no because, yes, and because I had to do something else. Just say no. It's not really anybody else's affair to ask why you say no. It's a perfectly legit answer.
But just sort of, you know, point deeper, you know, why is it when you're young? I mean, because I said lots of yeses and now I say lots of no's.
Yes.
And I think as you progress in life, you're more capable of saying no because you're less worried about how will others think of you. Because it ultimately comes to how does it affect you, that somebody will think they're disappointed or whatever it is. So when you're younger, I think part of it is around building your confidence. Once you have that, then you can be a lot more measured and a lot more, and then, you know, be strategic, because when you're young, you're young. You will learn how to say no, I think, pretty rapidly as the years go, because, I mean, I was a bit like you. I don't even know why I studied all these subjects. I was sort of just good at them indiscriminately. And, you know, now I'm a lot more choosy about who I spend time with. I mean, all the things. So
it's it's a process you go through. Yeah. It's a process. It's a growth. It's a process.
And it could be exercised and actually trained. We can train ourselves, kind of consciously saying, I'm going to say no, I'm going to say no, and then, yeah, eventually...
I'd like to give an example, even here, and why this is so important. First of all, I think that we are actually socialized as women, and socialized means that what have we been rewarded through the course of history, right? We've been rewarded, right, when we're cooperative, when we do things for others, right? And so society has socialized us, that's one thing. I give an example because I work, you know, at high level with women CEOs, moving them from success to impact. Now, I had the CEO who is absolutely successful. This is somebody who on social media has a following of close to 1 million. As a CEO, not as an influencer. She's absolutely amazing. And when she came to me, and in the role that she had, and what's next? And she goes, all my roles, and even this one, What happened was somebody said to me, we have this role, have this position, you'll be wonderful at it. Will you do it? And she goes, well, I can do it, I will do it. It was never, what do I want to do? And is this? And I told her, once you do that, you are living out the plans, visions, and missions of that other party, not yours. You need the two to coincide, right? What you want to achieve and what they want to achieve, and it coincides. But if you haven't articulated yourself what you want to achieve, you will get opportunities. You will say yes, and on the face of it, you could look as if you're successful at it, but does that bring you contentment or joy? Does that actually use all the things that you want in life? Does it actually? Probably no, because what you're doing is just achieving somebody else's goals or dreams.
Thank you. Yes, I saw two questions here, so who has microphone can start? Yes. Okay.
Okay, thanks. I'm really sorry for diverting us from this really important and interesting topic, but what was during your career development, what was the most useful advice that you got when you struggled with prioritizing your career over friends, family, and dealing with the guilt because you are prioritizing that? Thank you.
Okay. You know, I'm really focused on, in my life, I want to do something that gives me meaning. So that's the most important thing for me. It's not about salaries or what people expect me to do, because there are a lot of expectations, but I think meaning is the most important. So when I think about advices that I've had, when I entered politics, 2002, a friend of mine said, who had been in politics, be mindful not to lose your friends, even though you're in politics, because when you will leave politics, you won't have any friends except, that you actually nurture your relationship with them, because you don't gain any friends in politics. So when I left politics, a little less than a year ago, I found that I still had my friends. And I had very few friends that I had gained in politics, because you have to make the difficult decisions. It's not a sector where you are to be popular, definitely not. But I was very happy about that advice. I felt like I had this immense network of people around me that were still there after all this time and were there for me during the difficult times and the good times. So that was one good advice. And I think that is really... And, when I look back, I say, this advice was about priorities in life. Another good advice was when I had my third child. Then I was the Minister for Education, Culture and Science. And everybody said, she must leave as a minister. She's pregnant. She cannot come back as a minister. And then I said, why not? We have a legislation on shared parental leave. I'm coming back in a few months' time. We will have another minister while I'm there, and then I will come back. And I was really happy about myself a few years later when I realized that this was actually something that gave meaning to many women who actually wanted to do the same thing, but were told, you cannot just decide to be pregnant and leave because you're a top-level person, a minister, CEO, or whatever. So I think that was also a very good advice. And that was actually a colleague of mine who said, is this really so complicated? Of course you can have that kid and then come back. How complicated is that?
It is so interesting what you said, that in politics you're not in business of being popular. I would say that that's not the most common answer. So I think it would come more from women politicians than men. So congratulations for that. It maybe sounds like a completely normal thing to you, but I think it should be heard and talked about much more. Yeah.
Okay.
For me, I think, I'm not sure I had that advice, right? I think I figured it out, and that's probably why I'm doing what I'm doing today. I came from a family with a mother who was a lawyer, and she was the first in the region in Nigeria to become a lawyer. And so for me, growing up, it's not that I even thought that the battles had been won. There was no battle, because this was my environment. So I was not aware. I went to a school, which is a girls' school, which is all about, you work hard and you get to where you're going to. And so you did that, and you did, you worked hard, you got your good results, you went to the best school, you went to the best university. So it is all about personal effort. So I didn't see any of it coming. In fact, it had come and gone before I knew it had come and gone, to be honest. I had no clue. I got to the university I wanted to go into banking. I was in banking. I was the youngest who was hired for that role. I was doing brilliantly well. Where's the problem? I never once realized that there was an underrepresentation issue. All my mentors, and when I say adulthood, in my maturity that I realized all my mentors, even till today, right, who have become friends, were all men. There was nothing odd about that. I didn't think about it. When I had my daughter, not when she was born, when my daughter was in her 20s, and she was going into certain roles, and I was asking about how many women are going into those roles. Here we are in Europe, and seeing that there weren't many, and in today's world, she was the first in a unit in investment banking. She didn't know, but people kept asking, are you okay, are you fine? And she thought, what are you asking me? And I said, you're the first in that role. They have never had a woman before. It was at that stage I then went back and looking through the numbers and the data and realizing how few women have been in certain roles. I then realized certain things which had happened to me along the way had been related to the fact that I was a woman. It was that made me actually reflect even more. And this is why, with research and the research that I'm doing and have done, I realized certain things. One, in terms of the balance, and I'll say this, Katrín has had an amazing career, right? How many of us will have that possibility at that level? It's unusual. Yes. It's amazing. And there are lessons to be learned. But one thing about the careers of women is that when you look at it, very often for men who succeeding at high level, it's almost like that, race to the top, and then after that you retire, and then you're gone, almost. With women, there are twists and turns.
Yes.
And so the bottom line is that you can have it all, but just probably not at the same time. So when you have those, dips or whatever it is, keep your eye on where you're going to and make sure that you have that support. So that is what I would absolutely say is just keep your eye. And very often careers of women, especially women in big international organizations, you find that they're still honored over 60, 70, Christine Lagarde, Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, Kristalina, there are many women at that level who are getting 60s and more. So you have those dips, but don't remove yourself from that career line. Just make sure that when you have those dips, caregiving or whatever it is, that you still have your eye on the re-entry, right? And do something. One thing that I certainly did, I know, is that my mentors in all that time, I always used to contact them. I would always contact them, maybe share some articles that I read or something that was interesting. And so I was always in their line of vision, even when, I had young children.
Thank you.
Okay, so first of all, thank you so much for this amazing conversation and for being here. So my question, you've already alluded a little bit to it. During these times, it almost feels like we're losing some really hard-won successes. The winds are blowing in the wrong direction. So my question to you both is, how do you manage to keep up your optimism and your positivity during a time like this?
Well, I think it's, as you so rightly say, we're seeing pushbacks around the world. We're seeing pushback against women's sexual and reproductive rights. We're seeing pushbacks when it comes to pay equity. We're seeing pushbacks against women's participation. And of course, it's difficult to keep up the optimism. But then we must remember we have already achieved so much. I think it was actually John Stuart Mill that said, gender inequality, the difference between men and women is the most deeply rooted inequality there is to find. And that is in his book, Women's Oppression. And I've often thought of that because it is quite deeply rooted, and you sometimes feel, even when you become a prime minister in a country which is #1 in the world when it comes to gender equality, with all those women fighting, as I talked about earlier, for early childhood education and parental leaves and everything that has done it possible for me to do what I did, and still we have the pushbacks, and still as a prime minister you get those misogynic comments, you get those remarks that remind you of your gender, and it just makes you mindful. It's not the linear development. It's not something that you can take as a given. You have to be always there, stay vigilant. All of our countries are dealing with gender-based violence. I sometimes met colleagues in politics from other countries, and I started to talk about gender-based violence, and they said there is no gender-based violence in my country. Really? So don't forget that we have a long way to go, and I think that's the lesson I've learned from Icelandic women. You can actually experience a lot of frustration, but then you just have to stay vigilant, and the best advice I can bring up, is things like this. Yeah. Solidarity of different women from different directions, working in different sectors, but they have a clear vision on gender equality.
So, Anino, before you answer the question, I'm giving up my closing time because I know I just saw one kind of hand here. Just if you can, a quick question, and then maybe you can answer both questions, and then it's unfortunately time to leave.
Thank you so much. So I think one thing that's been implied but not sort of said directly is that women have a kind of different leadership style to men. I personally agree with that, but I want to know if you also agree with that. And if that's the case, what can we play up to? What are the unique strengths that women have that we can utilise and play up to?
Oh, it's certainly a great one, and the difference in styles is important because in today's world, especially when leadership has to be collaborative, it's exactly that makes decision making better. If all leaders behaved in exactly the same way, right, we are stuck in this groupthink and just heading in the wrong direction. So one thing about leadership styles for women is that very often, and at the same time, I don't want to generalize because it's not everybody, but we tend to have a more sort of collaborative approach to things, right? We tend to be very often sort of more thinking about things. We tend to take time. We tend to be risk averse in a good way. By the way, the research has shown that in banks actually that have a more diverse leadership team tend to have less issues with risk. So those leadership styles that for women, right, that might be quite different, are exactly our superpower together with men. Mm-hmm. However, having said so, when you look at what makes good leadership and the best leadership, there is nothing that is masculine or feminine, right, or rather related to a man or a woman. The best leadership, right, that people can have are both found in men and women. So one, to be empathetic, for example. Number two, to be collaborative. Number three, to be more sort of not just looking at what is going to benefit one person. All those skills, right, actually are in good leaders, men and women. So those leadership styles, I think that we should look at it as more of a superpower, and those are the styles that together with men, and not look at them as being different and therefore maybe negative. I don't know if that makes sense to you. And really just for us to say that those styles are equally as important as those that we might call the more masculine styles.
Yeah, I can agree with everything you said. I think the best decisions are made when you have diverse people around the table, men and women, people of different origin with different backgrounds, because you learn from everybody you meet and you learn from people you talk to. But I think, because the overwhelming majority of world leaders are men, I think we would have a lot more peaceful world if there were more women. Because they tend to have a different approach, not all of them, because it's not something that you can be too general about. but they tend to have, as you say, a more collaborative approach. When I first became a minister, I was very young. I could sense that in the ministry, that people were, oh my God, is this girl our new minister? Oh my God. And then I started to ask them, what do you do here in the ministry? And what do you think about it? And they said, this is something outrageous. She's asking us what to do and what do we think about it. You should say what, us, what to do and what we should think. And I said, what? Aren't you the experts? So this was quite a battle for some years. They really were wonderful when they said goodbye 4 years later, and they said, you have taught us a lot about collaborative leadership. I did not know that, but I was told that then, so I was very happy about it. But I think it was just this general approach. You learn from the people around you.
Okay.
We have to stop.
Yes,
they are doing this. I will stop talking.
I'm in a very tough position because I have questions here and I have signs that we have to finish on this side. So,
very short. I know, very short, because I must ask both of you how to explain that very simple fact. Look around us. Who run the world? What people really need, what's wrong with our civilization, because we are talking about inclusive leadership, we all need empathy, we all need deep changes, but look around us. Talking about political leadership, I know that it's a very difficult question, but maybe for you, Maya, above all, only short question.
As I said, it's one of the most deeply rooted inequalities in the world. We have had men controlling the world, not for decades, not for centuries, but for millenniums. Women's role as leaders is relatively very new, and it will take time. It will take time, but we will change it. We will change it, and we will do it with solidarity. I would like it to happen now. And I sometimes say, I'm 49 years old. It's driving me crazy that we are not already there. But I can also see that progress has been made. So let's think about the positive things and let them drive our force to push for change.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I know that we all would have so many questions for you, so many more questions, but thank you so much. And let's finish with this kind of message of courage and authenticity and hope and trust. And thank you so much for being with us today. Thank you.